everyone. I'm going to ask us to do an experiment, which is going to bring the lights down in front of you. Many of us, I've noticed, this is a normal thing now, we multitask, and we look at our phones during the talks. Totally normal. I do it too. The algorithms really draw us in, maybe the email, maybe a child. I'm going to ask for an experiment. I get to be the Autocrat of this 15-minute session. Maybe just put your phones away for 15 minutes. This isn't me being like a school marm or anything, just like I want to give you a mental health break. You can dream off of something else and not listen to Kristin and I, but for 15 minutes, it's a test to do this. And I want to start off in this conversation, are algorithms better than autocrats? With a thought experiment that I'll ask you all to respond to, and then Kristin, I'll ask you to respond. So there's a flood. It's raining a lot outside. All of you have a hotel to get to, or maybe a home if you're here. And you have three choices for who's going to lead us through that flood. Choice number one is a flawed human being, politician, that will make the decisions on which routes to keep open or closed, who gets rescued first, all the things that happen in a flood, which are increasing now in the times of climate change. My son lives in Valencia, and the whole city shut down on Monday because a year ago, 200 people died because a flood happened. So number one, a flawed politician. Number two, an algorithm will most efficiently decide which routes to keep open, who gets the life rafts, assuming we've got biases, I know, we'll talk about this, or an autocrat, who will be a strong command, there will be no argument, they will take charge. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. Try to do it as honestly. I know we're here at a democracy conference, but we heard this morning, if anyone was at the multilateral conversation, that monarchs deliver better for citizens than our very messy democracies. So how many people would choose the autocrat leaving today to help us get through the flood? Okay, either you're not, I'm going to think that's a hand. There's a couple low hands, thank you, How many would choose the flawed politician? Okay, and how many would choose the algorithm? Okay, so we've got algorithms over autocrats, but also over politicians. I'd love your thoughts.
Frightening. That's the start. When we started to talk about this, I thought, well, what's the difference with an autocrat and algorithm? Isn't an algorithm an autocrat, in a way? I still think that human politicians, flawed as they are, and they will always make mistakes, and they will always do things that we don't agree with, are still the backbone of our democracy and form the basis of which we have trust and respect for one another as a society, which we need. An algorithm, on the other hand, for me, becomes a sort of deep state thing. We don't know who programmed it. We don't know what trades-offs were made and why. I taught, for some years ago, I had the privilege of teaching moral philosophy at Harvard for Professor Michael Sandel. And this kind of question is what we did, throughout that course. And then we started to dive into things like the trolley problem that I'm sure everyone here knows about.
Could you just tell people, so they have it centered in their mind, what that trolley problem is?
So there are versions of this, but basically you have a train out of control, and you can pull a lever to take it onto a side track. And if it goes down the track it's already on, 5 people will die. And if you pull the lever, 1 person will die. What do you do, for example? And what you find then is there are always trade-offs. And an algorithm can't do that for us. Efficiency versus solidarity, messiness of life, I don't think is a good way to go forward.
And why not? I mean, what you're basically, for those of folks who chose the algorithms, what they're saying is we're optimizing for efficiency, right? And people make mistakes. So are you saying it's better to live with the mistakes of more people dying than the flood? I mean, it's humanity, right? Like, oh, you made the human decision to choose the person, but isn't the better decision for the most to choose the most efficient way? And that would be the algorithm. They'll make less mistakes, right?
In the short term.
Aren't you a nihilist, actually?
A nihilist, perhaps. Well, maybe. It is in the short run. But, the system-wide, this is not going to happen. The algorithms will make mistakes. And for other decisions, getting into the granularity of that will be impossible. We must accept risk. We must accept that there are human responsibility for things. We're not going to get it right. I know we talked about it. I'm very skeptical to this idea that the algorithm somehow knows better than us. And I see this as a trend of sort of trying to replace God with an algorithm, of sort of outsourcing responsibility to some being outside of us, an exterior. So I think, yes, unfortunately, sometimes it is the cost of being human.
Well, algorithm replacing God. It's super interesting because a lot of the folks building the big LLMs now are very Christian in their background. And how do they see God and algorithms going together? They must see them paired.
So that's a really interesting question. So what we see is, one thing is, how do we as a society feel overwhelmed and lack of agency? And so we want somebody to make those decisions for us that have the power to make good decisions, right? Mm-hmm. We don't want to make these decisions if we don't have the information, we don't know what resources we have, and so on. And it's tough. It's tough to make bad decisions. When it comes to some of the tech milieu, we see that, yes, there is a sort of playing God, the Frankenstein tendency, but then we have the whole undercurrent of transhumanism, which is sort of replacing God, which I think is quite scary, and this quest for immortality and all of that, which I find rather arrogant.
Rather arrogant. So I want to go back to the role of representative democracy that we have now. And there was a poll 2 summers ago that covered around 35 countries, where 51% of the respondents wanted AI to replace politicians. We're heading toward, that's not a scenario, right? We now have AI politicians. This is happening more and more. What do you predict is going to happen? Because people are giving away agency for efficiency, right? They're saying, I rather have, my life taken care of than have agency. And if that's the case, then was democracy a thought experiment in this short blip of history?
I think we are in a situation where we might come to the point where democracy was a thought experiment. If we continue on the trajectory we are now, if we don't claim it back, we see that there are more and more non-democracies in the world, even those who call themselves democracies, sometimes fall foul of this. I think we need to think differently. We need to think about what's the role of experts, what's the role of the civil service, in making decisions to manage resources. Politicians were never micromanaging these things, so we will have a civil service, you will have other bureaucracies that can do efficiency, who can make those cost calculations, and then advise politicians who again then can tell the voters and the civic population what's possible or not. So I think yes to the experts, yes to civil service, yes to the rule of law, yes to trust in public institutions, rather than an algorithmic state.
So yesterday, I spent time in a parliamentary caucus. We ran Better Politics Foundation with my colleague Hussam, and maybe there's some of the parliamentarians here talking about trust, leadership, and AI. In the end, we built a little agent to help us do policy analysis, so using the algorithm to aid. And in this discussion, trust came down, the research says that trust comes down for politicians to 3 things: benevolence, integrity, and competence. So this is important. Can AI have those things? Can we trust it if they build in these 3 things?
I think, yes, of course, we can trust technology in general. If it's safe, tested, transparent, made accountable, the people who are using it. So I'm not saying, no to algorithms and let's go back to doing everything with pen and paper. But I am saying we have to make sure that human beings are in charge. Now, in the UK, we've had reported that one of our ministers have been using ChatGPT for policy suggestions and advice. And I think, well, then we have a problem, because, of course, it's the people he represents that should give him advice on what policies. And I don't think we as a population will feel heard if we know ChatGPT is the one who's decided whether or not I get, for example, help with curing cancer. So yes, technology is great, but let's make sure we stay on top of it.
But can't you do both?
Yes, you can, and let's do that, right? But let's not have like algorithmic elections, right? I don't believe in the sort of the Albanian minister, digital minister, and the Saudi Arabian citizens. I think these are gimmicks. You know, at the end of the day, we want efficiency, we want good technology, but we want to also relate to one another as human beings.
Let's step back a little bit, and I didn't ask you this so I'm throwing this on you, but you can take it, I know. She walked in the rain to get here, so I know she can handle any agile moments. You get a magic wand. It doesn't have to be about technology. You get a magic wand to not just defend democracy now, but actually go on the offense. What do we do?
What do? We get rid of the corruption of the infosphere. We put in regulation to make sure that we as citizens and people have access to plurality of information, the veracity of information, when we know where it's coming from.
And what's stopping us from doing that?
Real politics, I would say.
Say more.
I think this is possible, and we have seen attempts at regulation for this, but then we have different cultures, but we have a very strong certain lobbyists that, under a misguided notion of freedom of speech, thinks that somehow having algorithms that push dangerous, harmful content on people all the time is somehow free in the marketplace of ideas. So I think commercial interests, I think malicious political motives drive a lot of this.
So I want you, in your last word, to put on your hat as a philosopher, someone who thinks and teaches philosophy. This is our sort of first principle moment. What is your advice to this crowd? What's the first principle that we need to go back to in democracy? You got technical in a very good way. Let's regulate the infosphere. You know, let's have pluralistic topics. Great. Bring us back up. What's the first principle to leave everyone with?
I think we need to start being bored. I think we spend so much time on our digital scrolling and constantly being stimulated that we don't have the space to think, to daydream, to trust one another. So I think that, you know, if there's one thing we can all do is practice a bit of boredom.
I'm curious because I see people with their phones out. Of course, you have agency to do whatever you want. But I keep telling my kids that the winners and losers of their future will be people who can pay attention and can be bored. And we know this is important for the brain. And so it's not just technical solutions, it's human solutions. And the great thing about that is you're in control. So with that, I really want to thank you for your expertise. And as we walk off, one of the things I want to leave you with hope for the 51% of you who decided to replace politicians with algorithms. At the Better Politics Foundation, we're looking at the political leaders who are the ones still in this realpolitik moment that will decide our destiny, if you think we don't have full state capture of whether or not the algorithms or the autocrats or with the autocrats will be in charge of us. And I'm going to leave you with a short clip of a documentary we're doing of politicians around the world that are really going back to the citizens, seeing the innovation. The crazy idea of an innovation is actually co-creating and co-governing with citizens. So with that, we'll roll the film.
City, I would like to go in a Europe not only with peace, but also with social justice.
Smart city is not something that appears one day. It's a whole process of changing many things.
I'm convinced that we need to have change on our decision making.